Why does Georgia belong in the playoffs and not Notre Dame?
Georgia has played a better schedule and been more dominant against that schedule. They play in a conference.
I'll have to stop you. That's SEC bias. That's SEC
No,
bias.
it's not SEC bias. It's plain metrics. You're telling me that Notre Dame has been more dominant than Georgia.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. If we're going to play bias, we might as well bring the BCS back.
I'm not talking about bias. I'm talking about what's happened on the field, the performance on the field. I'm not talking about bias. I'm talking about evaluate Georgia's.
That's bias.
No, it's not bias.
Yeah, it is.
Georgia has the #1 defense in the country against its schedule. That's not bias. Okay, now it's number 2.
They might still
I think they still have the #1 defense because before tonight, they could have given
17 points.
I understand Notre Dame got blown out by 11 points at home against a team that's not nearly as good as Alabama.
But there you go. Playoffs. They're going to be in the playoffs.
Who's going to be in the playoffs?
They're going to be in the playoffs at number 3. Well, Cincinnati, the team that beat them.
Absolutely. Actually, and the team that beat Georgia is going to be in the playoff too.
Well, that's biased.
Okay.
That's biased that there's 2 SEC teams.
I'm not being biased. I could care less about Georgia
football.
I'm not
saying you are. I'm not saying you are. I'm
present
saying
your
that
case.
If the committee.
So let's before you do, let me make sure I'm hearing you clearly. You believe that Notre Dame should be in the playoff and not Georgia.
Yes, I do at number 4. Yes,
all right,
I do.
Present your case.
My case is that they're a one-loss team too. They're a one-loss team. Yes, they didn't have a championship game. They didn't have a championship game. Okay,
but and whose fault is that?
It's theirs. It is theirs for not joining the ACC. But that's besides the point. That's besides the point.
It's really not beside
Alabama
the point.
clearly.
Georgia subjected itself to an extra
game. I don't look
game.
at 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't look at 1, 2, and 3, and 4 in the playoffs. I look at who deserves to be there. Not any bias.
You don't have any bias.
That Alabama.
Who do you root for?
I believe that Alabama, Michigan.
Okay, you're a Michigan
Cincinnati,
fan.
And Notre Dame believe to be there. I believe they deserve to be there because Alabama clearly decimated them by 17 points in the championship game. They had their shot, Georgia. They've had their shot 7 times, and they continually lose to Alabama.
What does that have to do with 2021? We could say
Oklahoma was getting the same treatment.
We could. Okay, you're digging a hole and just giving me more and more ammunition. Once I cut loose, you better look out because you're just digging a hole to give me more ammunition. You're talking about Notre Dame and you're talking about the past. Are you seriously going to make that fight between Georgia and Notre Dame in the playoffs? Really?
I actually will.
And are we going to bring up the 2 games that those 2 teams played in the last 4 years? Are we going to bring up that Georgia and Notre Dame have played twice in the last 4 years? And what happened in those games? If you want to bring up the past performance, bring up past performance. Georgia versus Notre Dame. What's happened there?
They've gotten beat usually.
Usually. No, it's what has happened when Georgia and Notre Dame have played since 2017. They've played twice.
Exactly, and that's what
happened the 2 times Georgia and Notre Dame played since 2017. We're not talking about Oklahoma. Let's talk about Georgia and Notre Dame.
I'm sorry.
You're bringing up the past in trying to validate Notre Dame. And I'm playing right into your hands. I will play that. I will play that game. I can play either game you want. We can either debate 2021 solely, or we can talk about the past.
I'm an avid Notre Dame hater, dude. I can't stand Notre Dame.
Okay, let me define something for you.
But I still believe they deserve to be in the playoffs.
I am giving you a choice. Do you want to?
Especially over Georgia, they got beat 17 points in their championship game and ain't even a champion. So they're on the same.
And Notre
Dame's.
You were doing nothing but giving me more ammunition. Notre Dame's a champion of what? What are they a champion of?
Well, they're not a champion because
exactly, just like Georgia, they are not a champion. Georgia's not a champion, but Notre Dame's not a champion.
Has that stopped the committee from putting in a non-champion?
Then why put Notre Dame in?
Of the same committee?
You're excluding Georgia because they didn't win a championship. You're excluding Georgia because they didn't win a championship. But give me Notre Dame's championship. Where is it?
The only team they lost to is an undefeated Cincinnati that's going, okay, if Notre Dame don't deserve to be there, then Cincinnati don't deserve to be there. And the top four should be Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State. Then Notre Dame deserves to be there because Cincinnati's the only team that beat them.
You're making less sense the more you talk. The more you talk, the less sense you're making. Let's start here. Because you've gone all over the place.
It was an 11-point loss to Cincinnati.
You've gone all over the place.
Week 5.
At home.
Week 5.
At home.
At home. Okay. But Notre Dame's beaten a Wisconsin by 28 points. They've beaten a Purdue by 14 points. They've beaten an FSU by 3.
Whoa. We're going to Florida State? We're building Notre Dame's resume on a 5-7 Florida State team that they beat in overtime. That they barely beat.
Clemson 10-3. A Clemson that's got like 5 losses.
Clemson doesn't at least understand what you're talking about. You at this point, again, you don't know what you're talking about. Clemson has not lost 5 games. They're not even close to a 5-loss team.
Well, no,
what are you talking about?
5 games.
They're not a 5-loss team. Why are you just making things up that are non-factual?
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it does matter.
It doesn't matter.
Don't say teams have 5 losses when they don't have 5 losses because it doesn't matter. Then don't even bring them up.
Well, obviously the games don't matter. The games don't matter because
the games do matter. A freaking team went 12-1 against a better schedule than the team that you want in. You understand that every point that you've made, I have shot to hell and completely overridden every point that you've made. You first state Georgia hasn't won a championship, but Notre Dame should be in. Where's their championship? You make no sense. And then you say Georgia lost a game.
They've never had
a championship. They lost to Alabama. Where's Notre Dame's championship?
Yeah.
And Notre Dame lost to Cincinnati. Notre Dame lost to a team that's not as good as Alabama.
By that standard, Baylor should be 4 then, right? They're a champion.
Fine. If you came with that argument, we could have that discussion too.
We can't because they have 2 losses. We can't.
Oh, they have 2 losses.
We definitely can't.
We are going strictly by record.
We have to because
if we're going strictly by record, 12-1 is better than 11-1. So again, you give me another piece of ammunition. You can go in any direction and I can out-argue you on any point. Because I've done it. You've brought up like 17 points and everyone favors Georgia. Better record. You want the better record? Georgia's 12-1, Notre Dame's 11-1. Bye. You didn't play in a conference championship game because you don't join a conference. Bye.
But that's not fair in a playoff era.
It is fair. Join a freaking conference. You had the opportunity to join a conference. ACC would beg and plead, and I'm sure they have, for you to join a conference. Notre Dame didn't want to join a conference.
Yeah, why
then you have to pay the consequences. Why would they? Because of scenarios like this.
When you get national coverage with every game you play and make so much money.
Everybody gets national coverage with every game.
Not everybody.
Yes, they do. Everybody. Ohio State plays every game on national television.
It depends on the area you're from.
No, they play every game on national television.
In certain areas.
No.
Whatever. I still believe that it should be Alabama.
Okay, you've given me no reason. If you would have come with some decent argument, but you did not. I was here to have a good debate on it, but you didn't bring anything reasonable.
The reasonable thing should be biased. Like, there shouldn't be two SEC teams. There shouldn't be two of any conference in the playoffs, plain and simple. There really shouldn't
be.
If you're going to keep Notre Dame out,
this is your next point. Okay, your next point is your next point.
Alabama, Georgia,
stop
Michigan,
talking and let me respond to what you just said. Your next point is that there should not be two teams from any one conference. So what conference is Notre Dame representing?
The Independent. That's a conference.
No, it's not a conference.
They're independent, being an independent, they're still independent.
What can you please make some sense? Say something that makes some sense.
So to speak.
No, being an independent is not being. There's not an independence conference. They don't play each other. That's not a conference.
I get that, but still, they deserve to be there.
Okay. I'm going to give you one more opportunity to say something that makes sense that will defend your selection of Notre Dame to the playoff. Go.
To defend my selection of the playoff.
Yes, you're like 0 for 40 right now.
0 for 40. I'll shoot for 0 for 50 then.
Don't tell me that Notre Dame should be in because Georgia didn't win a championship. Take Baylor. If you want to argue Baylor and say Georgia didn't win a championship and Baylor did, I'll say, okay, check for Baylor. Got it. But don't bring up Notre Dame and make your number one point because Georgia didn't win a conference championship. Oh, maybe he should have given me Notre Dame and I could have given him a better argument of why Notre Dame should be in the playoff. He should have said, Mark, you know what? I'm giving you Notre Dame. Argue for me why they should be in the playoff. And I could have come up with some semblance of an argument for him.